On there, folks. Earthmaster here on this Thursday evening, first day of October, October 1st, 2020 is the date today. 6:08 p.m. West Coast time out here in California, where things are still shaking down there in the southern part of the state. Large number of earthquakes occurring there in the earthquake swarm that's taking place near the Brawley seismic zone, which is an extension of the San Andreas fault system there down in Southern California. Latest quake on the globe, a 2.6 in that exact location. There's definitely been a huge number of earthquakes taking place down there, folks. I kind of want to show you guys what's going on here. This is just the 4.0 and above. I have this filtered out over the last couple days, although most of the activity occurred yesterday, just all of a sudden out of the blue at about 4 o'clock my time yesterday. So far we've seen about seven four-pointers so far. None today, but it's still kind of early. You know, we could still have some movement. Largest so far in that swarm of activity in the 4 range, a 4.9 there. And the depth of these earthquakes variable. Most of the quakes look like they're about 11 kilometers or so below the surface. But to see the big scope of things, folks, we have to go back to the one day all magnitudes there to see exactly what's going on. And there's a whole lot going on there. I want to make sure I got that right. It just doesn't look right there. Refresh that a little bit to the all magnitudes there, and we'll zoom in here in this region. That's about right. Okay. 674 earthquakes are occurring in the Brawley seismic zone, which is a pretty big deal. This is one of the most intense earthquake swarms that I've seen in California history when it comes to the multitude of quakes, as far as like the number goes, and also the magnitude of quakes, which means the level of the quake range, like as far as like the magnitude goes. And most of the activity we've seen today has been below 2.5, but we have seen a couple 3-pointers. The activity has not dropped off at all. There's one 3-pointer, and there's a bunch more. I'm not going to go through this whole list because there's way too many to mention there. But there's a lot of activity occurring out there, folks, and it hasn't completely calmed down. If anything, the migration has continued further northward. You can see this area we can zoom in a little bit here. You can see this, what's this called? New River? Can't really tell. It looks like New River right there. I don't know if there's any actual water down there or not, but they have it marked here on the map. You can see the swarming kind of moving over here to the north in a direction there, away from the main cluster. And that's kind of been doing that since yesterday as well. But also there's movement down here to the south away from the main cluster. So obviously there's a tremendous amount of pressure out here still being applied out here in this part of the state. We haven't really seen any uptick on the San Jacinto fault or any further major swarming up here in the Ridgecrest area. This is actually kind of below average for the swarming or the aftershocks that we've been seeing, including up here in Nevada. Northern Cal, awfully quiet as well, but the majority of the stress and whatnot is being played here in the south part of the state. Once again, the Brawley seismic zone here. That's kind of like this extensional fault right there. I did a little update, or at least a little look on it here from the Wikipedia article here. And it talks about the Brawley seismic zone, predominantly an extensional tectonic zone that connects the southern terminus of the San Andreas fault with the Imperial fault in Southern Cal. So one and the same, folks. We don't need to pull all this BS about, predominantly extensional tectonic zone, and big words there. Geologists and their big words, right? It's an extension. It's part of the San Andreas fault, as far as I'm concerned. There's definitely been some earthquake activity in the past on this specific area. And they talk about Little Swarm back in 2012, and I remember that. And the reason why I say Little Swarm is because it was only 300 small to moderate earthquakes. And I can't remember exactly how long that lasted. Let's see here. Of course, these guys always have to put that in there. Swarm activity is not completely understood, but the new restlessness could generate data that will help scientists to gain better understanding. So they're not 100% sure what's going on. Not 100% sure if this is going to cause a big earthquake out there. But far as like the Brawley seismic zone, there definitely has been activity specifically on that. Looks like during that swarm back in 2012 with 300 small quakes there in that swarm. And by the way, we're well over 600 now in this current swarm. There was a couple quakes of 5.3 and a 5.5 there. That's larger than what we've seen in this swarm, but I don't think this swarm's over by a long shot. Such swarms are typical for the Brawley zone. The area sees lots of events at once, with many close to the largest magnitude, rather than one main shock with several much aftershocks, smaller aftershocks. So we've seen a wide range of earthquake activity over the last 24 hours there. So yeah, there's a what was that? The El Centro earthquake, 1940. That was it looks 6.9 that occurred roughly within that area there. Which is the Imperial Fault, which sits just to the south of this region. Excuse me. That's where they've seen that 6.9 back in 1940. Also, the Imperial Fault there, 1979, was a pretty good one as well. Imperial Valley Fault there was a, well, where'd it go here? Oh, there we go. 6.5. Pretty good size shaker out there. You know, and I think we all can agree that there's a potential for some larger quakes out there on this specific area. And I'm definitely not denying that. But what I'm worried about here is the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault being activated and shaken up, or applied too much pressure out there that releases over 300 years of built-up pressure. That's kind of what I'm worried about, and I kind of mentioned that in my last update video last night. The USGS, of course, Lucy Jones over here, she knows quite a bit of stuff when it comes to earthquakes and whatnot, but I still believe they're kind of downplaying the seriousness of all this activity, and they kind of have to. You know, you don't want to cause fear, but if a big one were to happen, she could back up her info and say, look, we gave it a 1% chance that there was a big earthquake going to occur. So they have to cover, they're behind. She's a seismologist and whatnot, founder of some stuff. Her latest post here is, looks like, 20 hours ago. There is an increased risk at the same location that has already had quakes. More threes tonight are very likely. A M5 is possible, but only at the same location. Are you sure about that? Only at the same location? That was 20 hours ago. And then she goes on to throw out the word repeat time, because she's tired of hearing people talk about the potential of this being right next to the San Andreas Fault. So she doesn't want to be disturbed in her peacefulness, when it comes to putting out her word. So let's all bow down. Anyway, she states here, repeat time. It's time to repeat because you guys aren't listening. Quakes make other quakes more likely. Really? But only nearby. Today's 4.9, which was yesterday, right, fault is 2 miles across, so it can affect quakes within about 5 miles. The only faults nearby are small. In other words, there is no scientific reason to predict a big quake in another location today. All right, she knows it all. Let's go back over here, folks, and take a look at the location of where this activity is. On the scale here, we're looking at about 10 miles or so due south from this current activity. The San Andreas Fault, the southern section of the San Andreas Fault, the big one. This is where the big one will occur. There's no doubt about it. We might see other moderate to large quakes in areas that have not been specifically mapped or studied. There's always new faults popping up out here. It is a major fault boundary, folks, or plate boundary. You got this giant North American plate over here, and the Pacific plate is by far the hugest out here. There's a lot of movement and tectonics and technical studies that need to be done out here before they can specifically state a scientific answer like Lucy Jones does. You know, there's only going to be a big quake within 5 miles. There's no way it can affect anything else. You know, they don't know that. They really don't. But I see it as a threat out there. I see all this activity as a threat on the San Andreas Fault here. And the reason why I say that is because each swarm out here that we've seen is different. It could be different location. It could be different depths below the surface. A lot is at stake, and a lot has changed since the last swarm as far as plate tectonics go. A lot of shuffling around of the plates, a lot of movement, pressure releases, pressure increases on different areas down here. So one swarm is not the same as the other. There's no point even attempting to say that. And to say that this swarm could not trigger a big earthquake on the San Andreas Fault is very downplaying in my book. Very downplaying. And I do not fearmonger too much on this channel at all. Not saying there's going to be a big one, but to downplay it that much, saying that there's not going to be, within 5 miles. If there's going to be a big quake, it's going to be within 5 miles. Okay, come on. I gotta. Where's she at? She's up here. Goodbye. I had to get rid of that link. I don't know. Sometimes I can't stand the lady. So the migration, folks, looking at it on a factual map here. This is USGS, right? This is pretty much what I use for my information and whatnot out here. I go to the USGS a lot. It's a good source of information, but sometimes the top dogs in the departments and the positions that they hold, sometimes they let that position get to their heads, and just about repeat time. She feels inconvenienced because she has to repeat stuff. Well, you know what? Oh my God, never mind. Let's move forward. 10 miles, folks, is the San Andreas Fault that sits up here. Geologically speaking, that's a very close range to the San Andreas Fault. What do we got going on up here? A little 1.2. So yeah, swarming still very active. The red circles indicating the last hour of earthquakes. The most recent at 2.3 over here. There's a little bit of migration everywhere, folks, except for the east part, it seems like. It looks as though in the north, we're seeing migration to the north and to the south, as well as to the east over here with these new quakes popping off. So pressure has not gone away in this area, and I think it's very possible we could still see some further activity well above what we're seeing right now. So yeah, there's definitely a good possibility here. We're kind of keeping an eye on it, and we'll see what wants to happen there. I mean, really, 600 and whew, that just blows me away. 664 earthquakes out there, and looking at these, look at the depth of these earthquakes again over here to the left. They vary. I mean, there's one at 1 kilometer. 2 kilometers. There's a lot between 5. There's a lot up to 10 or 11 kilometers. I'm not for sure what the deepest earthquake we've seen so far is in this region. The 4.9 that we seen yesterday was about 11 kilometers below the surface, so that was pretty deep. That's the thing that's kind of got me worried. There's major movement going on, way below the plate and above the plate as well. So it's definitely continuing, that's for sure. Let's go ahead and look at the rest of the globe here real quick, at least the map. Seen some activity up in Idaho. Not a whole lot there, folks, just a couple twos and whatnot, some microquakes popping off as well. Haven't seen really an increase in activity out there. Pretty much average activity out there in the west that we've been looking at over the past couple days. Some microquakes taking place out here near Tennessee, and also in the North Carolina region there, where there was a little bit moderate sized quake there. What was it, a couple weeks ago now, a few weeks ago. Not going to bring that up, but nothing really to specifically to talk about there in that area. We have seen a little bit larger increase in movement over here to the west, out here in the western part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, including that 6.0 near Papua New Guinea. Of course, yesterday we had that 6.4, 6.7 originally over here near Tonga. That has since dropped off the map there, but we have definitely seen some movement over here on the increase, unlike what we seen yesterday. Still kind of looking up here, folks. Very quiet on this part of the Pacific Ring of Fire around Tokyo, and especially up here around Philippines as well. Very absent of earthquake activity according to the USGS there. So definitely an area to watch. So yeah, don't let these folks tell you that the swarm has died down. Here's an article, the newest article here from the USGS, their earthquake forecast for the Westmoreland swarm beginning yesterday, September 30th. This article, release date, September 30th, but here we got the latest update here. Last update, October 1st at 8 a.m. this morning. And I'm not going to read specifically all of this, but they don't like to mention the large number, which is what, 661 earthquakes? They mentioned some smaller earthquakes, like, I don't know if they even mention a total number in here. The swarm of earthquakes southeast of the Salton Sea in the Brawley seismic zone began yesterday, right? The swarm continues today, but at a lower rate. They talk about a couple magnitude 3s that occurred, and the 4.9 that also occurred yesterday as well. This earthquake activity and the associated swarm are located in an area of diffuse seismic activity between the San Andreas Fault in the north and the Imperial Fault to the south. This area has seen swarms in the past, folks, so no worry. Notably, the 1981 Westmoreland swarm, which included a 5.8, but it was only consistent of 300 earthquakes were in this one, 2012, which also included a 5.4. Past swarms have remained active for 1 to 20 days with an average duration of about a week. The current swarm is occurring 12 miles to the south of the swarm that occurred near Bombay Beach back in August 2020. So in a typical week, there's approximately a 1 in 3,000 chance of a magnitude 7 plus earthquake in the vicinity of this swarm. During the earthquake swarm, the probability of larger earthquakes in this region is significantly greater than usual, about 1 in 300. The swarm continues to evolve, and we expect to update this forecast with more specific probability information as we collect more data. So I'm not going to go through all these scenarios. Most likely I did this last night. If you want to check it out, you can zoom on over to the USGS.gov website, enter their newsroom, center-news, and you can see the latest updated information when it comes to their earthquake forecasting and their what to do about earthquakes and whatnot. So, I think it's still a big deal going on. And I think swarms definitely do increase. I've always thought that swarms increase the likelihood of a larger earthquake. But I also believe that they can possibly affect areas away from the main activity, right? Because if you really think about it, where's this pressure going? Is it disappearing into thin air? Obviously not. It's definitely building up somewhere else. Now, could it be building up here to the west or north? Absolutely. It could be building up anywhere, but you have to look at the migration of the quakes is kind of what I look at a lot, and it's showing the migration to the north, to the south, and also over here to the west. We don't see too much over here in the east at the moment, but it's definitely increasing when it comes to the migration in many different directions here. So ultimately, I believe this activity could affect the San Andreas Fault here, which is super duper quiet at the moment. But you don't want to have people, yanking on that dog's chain, because that can be some bad news. So what else we got, folks? A little bit of activity over here around the Mediterranean, 5.1. Of course, that activity we have seen for quite some time there. We've been seeing a little bit moderate sized quakes around the Aegean Sea, and also over here around the what's it called, the Ionian Sea. That's a good one. I may not know that one. Ionian. Somebody's gonna have to correct me on that one. Just include it in the comments there. I'll try and catch up with it. But yeah, activity continues in that region of the world as well. But main focus, kind of focusing on out there in the west. I do want to go into this day in earthquake history real quick, just in case I forget that tonight. I may do another update video tonight, depending on what happens there in Southern Cal. This day in earthquake history, October 1st, back in 1995. A pretty blurry year for me. We had a 6.4 earthquake in western Turkey. Quite a bit of damage and some fatalities included in that as well. A pretty big quake for that area. Also 1987, October 1st, 5.9 near Rosemead, California. That struck there down around this region that, well, kind of northwest of the area that we're looking at right now. Kind of around the Los Angeles area. Quite a few damages and whatnot there with that earthquake. Pretty strong 5.9 there. Let's see where to go. I lost my. Yeah, pretty good there earthquake right there. Looks like shaking was pretty severe, at least for some of the folks there in that region. Also had a 6.4 quake there back in 1969 on this date in central Peru. Yeah, some major damage out there as well, and unfortunately, again, lots of fatalities there in that size of an earthquake. So, folks, we're just still kind of keeping an eye on the west coast. The latest seismograph here is going to be this Barrett station. That's the station I monitor for the activity there in Southern Cal. Just got a quake exiting the data right now. After that, some small quakeage, but you know, this thing could ramp up at any time, and it seems to have been doing that over the past 24 hours. We'll get this die down for a little bit, and then it will ramp up once again. So be on guard, you know, just stay safe out there. And we got the Earthquake Live 3D stream running 24/7. Come on over for some chat, and we'll see what this thing wants to do. Anyway, folks, have a good night. I will be back a little bit later, potentially here on the 3D stream. More than likely I will. But we'll chat you guys a little bit later.